This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network, and this episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Some recent news here, Greg. I don't know if I'd call it breaking news, but we're recording at about 1:15 on Wednesday. And less than 10 minutes ago, NFL executive Troy Vincent announced a new end-of-the-year award, and I thought this was right up your alley. The new end-of-the-year award is the quote-unquote Protector of the Year to recognize the best offensive lineman each year in the NFL.
I obviously have to be on this selection committee, don't I?
Yes.
Troy,
yes.
If you're listening, call me.
It's about time though, right? I mean, this is it seems well overdue to shout out the best offensive lineman in football every year, given the importance of the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. And I just saw Hard Knocks training camp this year will feature the Buffalo Bills. Protector of the Year. So it's just one offensive lineman. Now I need to get into like the nitty gritty. Recognize the best offensive lineman each year. I mean, I love it. You're totally right. I mean, these guys, they get the all pro nods, but they're not getting, MVP or, that sort of thing. I mean, look, personally, I'd like to see it, split a little bit, at least interior and tackle or something along those lines.
Right.
Eventually I think it'd be tackle, guard, and center, but we got to start someplace, and somebody's got to, represent the big fellas. And I like it. I like it a lot.
All right. How about the Tush push? That's the big NFL news today. People thought the Tush push was going to be out, and then apparently Jason Kelce went to the meetings to plead for that. This seems like a very big deal over a play that is worth about 1 yard to 2 yards most of the time. But do you even care about the Tush push surviving?
No, I don't care one way or the other. This is, my frustration with NFL coverage this time of year, and it goes for a lot of things, including some of the things we're going to talk about in this podcast.
Yeah.
But, this sort of, post-draft, before training camp. I mean, yeah, you got some people, depending on what they like, they're into the NHL playoffs. I am. You're, I'm sure, into the NBA playoffs, even though the Celtics are out, and you're probably like hate watching and sitting there and grumbling about how the Celtics aren't playing, especially once the Eastern Conference Finals start tonight. I'm also invested in, the NCAA softball playoffs, which are tremendous, and start tonight with a couple of really good games on ESPN2, if you are so inclined. And we'll have NCAA baseball and all that stuff. But in terms of the NFL, this is the dead part of the schedule. And you have all these outlets, starting with whether it's Pro Football Talk or basically anybody who covers the league for clicks. And that's most people. I sort of got into it with some guy on Twitter the other day yesterday because he was mad about my Drake Maye headline. And about how, like, I get it, you have to write for clicks. That's the whole point of BSJ is I don't write for clicks. I serve at the pleasure of the members, who our members are knowledgeable, and what they want is they want an honest assessment of the Patriots. What I saw, I give my interpretation of what I saw. People are free to make their own opinions about, what we saw at practice. But I really say I wanted to set up spam filter for Tush push and Belichick and his girlfriend. I mean, anyone is talking about, because there's nothing else to talk about in the NFL, and people are just going off. If this Tush push thing happened in the middle of draft season, nobody would really care. There'd be a couple articles, but because there's nothing going on, seriously, everybody is tweeting about it. Everybody is writing about it. I don't care. Keep it in, take it out. Doesn't matter to me. Just make a decision, and then we can go on with our lives.
The amount of coverage is just insane. I, over the last 24, 36 hours, have gone back and forth with some people on this Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick thing. And at my Patreon page, I had somebody ask me on the mailbag about the idea of this story and what I think about the story. And honestly, I don't care, Greg. I just don't care. I don't have any passion to care about this story. I understand some people do. That's cool for them. You know, I'm not going to tell people what to care about and not care about. There's absolutely zero evidence that this is going to affect the football of North Carolina.
Yep.
We don't know Bill's personal life when he was here with the Patriots and what happened. I'm sure there were distractions during his time here. I know Chad Graff wrote a story yesterday about how Bill asked her to wear red pants at a game so he could see her. And I actually had somebody, and I know this is I would imagine, a minuscule portion of the people out there, but I did have somebody tell me that would be a distraction, that Bill Belichick was distracted in his last season. They won 4 games, and he was worried about Jordan Hudson wearing red pants. And I got to tell you, if you think the head coach who went to the AFC Championship game right after his star tight end was arrested for homicide, if you think that guy is going to get distracted and allow his football team to be distracted by his girlfriend, I don't know what to tell you.
I do, Nick, I do wonder, who's the guy who calls in Felger and Maz? Bob and Needham? Who's the Bob and somebody?
I have no idea.
There's some guy who is just a total Bilbo, always defends Bill. I mean, I'm sure these guys are getting twisted into a pretzel, which that in it of itself is entertainment to me. But yeah, I any of this talk, like Bill, I first of all, like let's not look back with hindsight. I mean, I know people around the team. I've reported on this team for a long time. Not one time did anybody raise a flag and say, Bill's distracted. Bill's got this girlfriend, like whatever. I'm sure they would have told me. There were no concerns about that. Everybody did their job. They just sucked. The personnel went down. And that had nothing to do with Jordan Hudson. The reason why the Patriots fell off, the reason why Belichick got fired is because his personnel chops went straight down a hill, and so did the roster of the team, and so they couldn't compete anymore. And that's the reason. It wasn't X's and O's in any game or not being prepared for any game. I think maybe there were a couple times, thinking back, Nick, where I think certainly I had a few issues, like the way they approach games, like the Buffalo games at home where they didn't try to win, and some of the players had issues with it, but you could see why they did it, because they knew they couldn't compete. So they were just trying to, basically keep the big plays to a minimum, keep the points to a minimum to give themselves a shot, which isn't a bad way to play it. I just would have played it a different way. But at no point do I look back and I say, you know what? Bill abdicated his job. He was too wrapped up with a girlfriend, like whatever. I never thought that, and I'm not going to think that now.
It's just it's a little aggravating. And I get it. People want, and again, you do you. Okay. If you care about it, awesome. That's fine for you. If you are in the media and you love covering it and talking about it and writing about it, that's cool. Maybe I'm going crazy here, but I've said this on 98.5. I've said this in other places. An old, rich, white guy dating a young woman is not new in this world. It happens all the time. And a lot of times that young woman ends up involved with that older, rich guy's business. It happens all over the world. It happens in every different business category. the background of the woman, whether she was, working in a hair salon or a cheerleader or trying to be Miss Maine, or she was, you know, heavily educated and has a bachelor of science or whatever, that like, this is not anything new. We've seen this. This is like human nature. Old women, older men, they date younger people when those older men and women have money. They fight the aging process. They get Botox and plastic surgery, and they buy new houses, and they find younger people to date because they're not feeling great about being older. I'm pretty sure Robert Kraft's wife is significantly younger than Robert. So we can look through all of this. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? If UNC sucks at football this year, it's going to be because Bill has lost it as a coach and the team's not talented enough. Bill Walsh faded. Did he fade because he had a 24-year-old girlfriend? No, he faded because that's what happens. It's what the game evolves. Coaches evolve. You get older. You're not as sharp. That's what happens. It's called life. That's already enough. We talked enough about it. Let's get Greg even more riled up. Drake Maye threw 4 interceptions at the OTA practice. Big deal or no big deal?
Not a big deal. Not at all. And no matter how much other people, including some well-compensated radio and TV hosts, try to make it a big deal, it is not a big deal. And just to answer Michael, the reason I was down there was because it's my job, and there was a practice open to the media, and I went down there, and in my role as a Patriots analyst, a Patriots columnist, I went down there and reported back to my BSJ members and also listeners of this podcast exactly what I saw. I put it into my own personal context, which comes from covering the NFL for over 20 years and seeing a bunch of different iterations of passing camps, mini camps, OTAs, all this stuff, from covering the Dolphins, the Packers, the Patriots, the NFL at large. And given my experience, I tell you what I think about it. You are free not to listen to it. You are free to overreact, which if I am a talk show host in Boston, if I hosted a show, I would probably do that, given that the Bruins were not in the playoffs this year and still don't have a coach. And Don Sweeney just got a contract extension, and now he's finally going to get around to interviewing in-person candidates next week. Thanks for taking your time, Don. I'm glad about that. The Celtics.
Wait, it's completely Greg. It's not like Sullivan and Tocchet and Quenneville already got hired. Okay, so stop being so tough on Sweeney.
Exactly. The Celtics. We all know what happened there. Jason Tatum's Achilles never should have popped in that series. Maybe it would have popped in the next series. The series should have been over. They blew it. Now we're staring at a Red Sox team that finally won 2 straight games. Once Alex Cora went to BC graduation and then got ejected, he's been Wally pipped. I'm sure the owners are thinking, why are we paying Alex Cora again $7 million a year? If whatever. So basically, long story short, there is nothing going on in Boston sports right now. Certainly nothing good. Nothing that anybody wants to talk about. It's all a bunch of crap. It's all stuff that's down the road. And we got to watch this Red Sox team by itself for 2 months. And nobody wants to do that, especially talk show hosts, where the Red Sox don't move the needle as much anymore in this town. So what are they going to do? They are going to instill fear in you. Oh, my God. Drake Maye threw 4 interceptions. Oh, my God, this is what he did last year. Oh, my God, there's another offensive coordinator. Oh, my God, there's another playbook. They are ruining him. This is from the playbook, how to ruin a young quarterback. Fear, fear, fear. Go clutch your pearls. Everybody go under the blankets in fear for your lives. Drake Maye is going to be a horrible quarterback because they justifiably fired a coach who deserved to be fired, a terrible coaching staff who got lucky that they drafted Drake Maye, and he basically played on natural instinct last year. And now they have real coaches in here who are building Drake Maye up from the bottom up in a new offense with a new scheme. And yeah, it got off to a little bit of rough start because guess what? They have a bunch of freaking new players who have never been in this system before out there, including rookies and undrafted tight ends who are running all over the place, and nobody knows exactly what they're doing yet. Yeah, Drake Maye is playing slow and all that, but this is what happens when you start anew. And the Patriots needed to start anew. There is no need to panic. If Drake Maye is throwing 4 interceptions in early August in training camp, then I will start to panic. I will not panic in May. So that's the end of my rant.
Well done, sir. I will just ask this question, and it's rhetorical. Nobody out there has to answer it, including Greg. But let me just throw this rhetorical question out there. What do you think the reaction would have been if Drake Maye went out there and threw 5 touchdowns on his first 8 pass attempts?
Yep.
Would there be a parade? Would there be people screaming from the mountaintops that this guy's going to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL in 2025 because he threw 5 touchdowns at an OTA practice? No. So just ask yourself that question. All right, before we move on with things that actually matter and some takeaways and some thoughts from Greg regarding the OTA practice that was open to the media, first, Greg wants to tell you about something else that matters, and that's PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick or more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on PrizePicks will enter you in the Takes 2 tickets sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the championship series. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the ice in your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's goals, points, or hits. Take your pick or more or less to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Think Connor McDavid will get more than 1 goal this week or next week in the Western Conference Finals? Will Brad Marchand get more than 2 penalty minutes in the next game after what just happened the other night? Cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Nick, before we get going in a different direction, I don't know if you're going to go in a different direction, but I'm jumping you. So, on Drake Maye's interceptions, and by the way, let's point out the entire offense looked pretty sloppy the first half of the competitive. There were really sort of 2 pretty competitive for padded team portion.
Yeah.
Vrabel had to dial things back a couple times. I wonder if they'll be hearing from the NFL a little bit because it was a little active. I'm not going to narc on them or anything. It wasn't that bad. But anyways, Vrabel had to step in. On his interceptions, this is what I saw from practice. And I haven't talked to anybody. I haven't had a chance before jumping on the podcast. But given my experience covering the league, and Josh McDaniels and the Josh McDaniels offense, and with new quarterbacks, whether it's Cam Newton, Mac Jones, that sort of thing. My interpretation from what we saw at practice out of the offense the other day was whether it's, they had rookie camp, they've had some on-field OTAs, the voluntary workouts and things like that when coaches could get involved. To me, it looked like, first of all, they ran the gamut on offense, whether it was they ran a bunch of different blocking for running plays. They ran quick games. They ran screens. They ran deep passes. They had a fullback on the field. They had multiple tight ends. They had 4 wides. They had basically looked to me like Josh or Vrabel or whoever said, you know what? I mean, it's curious that they did it in front of the media. They'll probably second guess that the next time out. But it looked to me like they said, you know what? Let's just put a bunch of different stuff on them and sort of see what we see. Just sort of it was a lot of experimentation just to see where they are. And, the entire offense was pretty sloppy. Drake did not throw the ball well. He looked like very early Drake Maye last year, which is what you expect with a new offense and a new coordinator and all that. Remember there were times early in training camp where like he's kind of struggling to come along. It looks like he's feeling things out. He's thinking a lot, and then suddenly things started to click for him.
Yeah.
That's going to happen again. It doesn't mean he was set back. It doesn't mean he's going to be ruined for this year. This is the process. And, you were right to point out, and the way I covered these things, if Drake Maye went out there, I'm sure there would be other reporters who would be pants off about Drake Maye throwing 5 touchdown passes and going 12 for 12 or whatever.
Listen, Joe Milton was better than Drake Maye last year. Don't you forget it at training camp.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that I would not be one of those reporters who was pants off if Drake Maye was great yesterday. And so the other flip side of that is I'm not going to overreact when, he's feeling his way through things. It's fine. He's got a lot of rookies out there. I mean, one of the first interception, he overthrew CJ Dippre, who was an undrafted free agent tight end. I think 2 of them were in Kyle Williams' vicinity. Another one happened in the flat that that Christian Gonzalez dove and picked off. Obviously, something went wrong there. Probably, I don't think it was the throw. Somebody wasn't in the right place. Another one, Hunter Henry was having his right arm held, and he just sort of out of frustration, tapped the ball, and it happened to go to Craig Woodson, the rookie safety. And so, one of them was really bad. It was right to Del Pettis. There was no offensive player there. Obviously, something broke down there. And that's what these camps are there for. They're for not just the quarterback, but the entire offense to learn, to look at this on film today or last night after practice, because I think they're off today. And they go over it and they make their corrections and go from there. So to get back to what you originally asked me, no, I'm not concerned. Again, if this is the middle of August and this happens, yeah, I'll be concerned. But this is how you learn. I have a high level of confidence in Josh McDaniels and Drake Maye, and this is part of the learning process.
Yeah, you mentioned the breadth of the offense at the OTA practice. I mentioned this on the Locked On Patriots episode today. I wondered if it was McDaniels just trying to get a baseline of where at, right? Like you get that baseline, you throw a bunch of stuff at people, you see how much they can deal with, how much they absorb it, how much they know, and then you work from there and say, okay, we're going to pare this back. They're not doing this great. And it's just kind of to set that baseline to see how much they're capable of dealing with at this moment in time. All right, let's get to some other thoughts here. Offensive line combinations. I know some guys were out. They were limited. Sidney So was out. Morgan Moses was limited. Jared Wilson was limited. Any thoughts about the O-line combinations?
Not really. I mean, they were pretty much as we expected. I know, I don't know if I want to say too much about this, but let me just sort of media-wise, this sort of happens all the time where there's a new regime put in and they worry about how much information's out there because there's the NFL reporting policy and all this stuff. I'll just say what I reported yesterday was nothing that I haven't done before. And because things were so jumbled up in terms of Morgan Moses wasn't out there, Mike Onwenu wasn't really taking part, and there was one more. Oh, Jared Wilson, the rookie. He wasn't really out there. So there was no formulation of a depth chart. I'm not going to reveal the depth chart. But let's just say for the sake of argument that, the guys that we figured would be in the left tackle mix. Will Campbell, considering Mike Vrabel said after the draft, he's left tackle. Was it Vidarian Lowe who was out there? There was one guy. No, excuse me. Vidarian Lowe was out or watching a lot. Marcus Bryant got work at tackle. Cole Strange got a little bit of work at center, which we have heard from the coaches before that was going to happen. But mostly he was at guard where you would expect him to be. Wes Schweitzer, when you look at the depth chart that I put together, he's the veteran that they signed, and he can play guard and center. And you look at let's just say everybody knows left guard is wide open for the Patriots. Garrett Bradbury and Ben Brown are playing center. That's where they've always played. Ben Brown for the Patriots, Garrett Bradbury for the Vikings. There were a few moving parts, but there wasn't really anything, out of the ordinary. I will say that Will Campbell a couple of times, especially early in practice, and again, I don't have a great angle and I don't have film, so I can't go back and watch. I do think he gave up some pressure to Keion White in a variety of ways. Am I concerned about that? No. It's his second sort of like real NFL practice against real NFL players and without pads. So, nothing out of the ordinary out of the offensive line group. It was pretty much what everybody expected to see.
Mike Onwenu, I know last year when he showed up to camp, there were some concerns, especially from you about his weight. Any concerns this year about what you saw?
Yep. Concerned again. He looked
Yep.
He looked big. Conversely, I will say Christian Barmore looks fabulous. He looks to be in great shape. He was running around a lot, so that is great to see. Yeah, Mike Onwenu is Mike Onwenu. He's built more and more like a refrigerator, every year. I can't tell you where he's out of shape. He looks out of shape. I wouldn't say he's out of shape. He just looks big to me. And I noted that last year. I noted it again. Another guy who trimmed down, who looks really good, Jelani Tavai. And he got run at off-the-ball linebacker exclusively. Definitely down the depth chart. And one thing I also wanted to mention, because I was just listening to Phil and Tom Kern on their podcast, and unless I'm mistaken, because Phil said that Marte Mapu didn't take part. I could have sworn I saw him all day long at linebacker. Now, he's far down the depth chart, and I did want to note there's a lot of guys, a lot of returners. Jabril Peppers did not take part in team. Kyle Duggar did not take part in team.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to see exactly where they are and where they fit. But guys that stood out to me, Jelani Tavai, off the ball linebacker, down the depth chart. Marte Mapu looked like he was playing linebacker to me. Could have been just a different day where it was sub. I don't know. Where they're playing sub package. I don't know. He played a lot of off the ball linebacker. I've had a lot of people ask me about that. Very far down the depth chart. Anthony Jennings down the depth chart. Again, we don't know what's going on in this specific practice. This is one practice out of 3. He could have been with the starters, the practice before. He could be there on Thursday when they're back on the field. But from what we saw, he seemed to be down the depth chart. So Marcus Jones was in his normal spot that you would see. I'm trying to think of, maybe you could think of some returners if you have any questions about. But those are the things that sort of jumped out to me, that there were a lot of guys who are coming back who were down the depth chart. I will say Christian Ellis was one of the exceptions. He's getting a lot of run at linebacker. So definitely interesting practice.
Keion White, you mentioned him getting pressures on Will Campbell a couple times. Where was he mostly lined up or exclusively lined up, and how'd he look?
He lined up, a lot. There was some movement, but, mostly over the left tackle, as you would expect out of him and out of that scheme. A variety of different stances, whether it's, hands in the ground or standing up. I thought he looked really good. He looked really natural. He looked comfortable with what was going on. I thought the entire, defensive front, and they used a bunch of different guys up front, was Milton Williams and Christian Barmore together, or Kyrus Tonga got a lot of run out there at certain times. Harold Landry was out there on the edge of a lot. Chase on would, get out there at times with sort of the quote unquote starters or, top level guys, where they're working on one field and the other guys are working on another field. So I will say in general, Nick, what we saw out of the defense, and again, we'll see how this develops, because really yesterday I was just struggling to figure out who's who with the new guys, the jersey changes, like all this stuff. Like, so like baby steps for the big fella in terms of taking in stuff at practice. But at times they would show a lot of man-to-man. They would show, man looks and then suddenly go to something else. Like, so I would say, I was excited about the defense, the speed that they played in, the different things that they can do, which I'm sure contributed to the offense. But excited about the defense. Yeah.
As you're listening, we ask you that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. Check out Greg and company over at BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard and Giardi tag teaming on the Patriots, Corrales with the C's. It's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Celtics. It's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Bruins as well. So check out Haggerty's work. And don't forget to download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. I've got 3 rookies I want to ask you about before we get out of here. You wanted to see Travion Henderson at rookie minicamp. You were not able to see Travion Henderson at rookie minicamp, but you were able to see him earlier this week, Greg. So I wonder, what were your takeaways?
Love. I love what I see out of Travion Henderson, from the way that he's built, which is basically like a brick shit house. I mean, did I say that right? Anyway,
Yeah, you said it right.
Anyways, I wouldn't say he's, who's a well-built guy to the ground. Like, he's not, one of these like short, stocky guys. I mean, he's
Drew. He's not a Jones Drew.
No, he's not something like that. But he is. He's got a lot of muscles. He looks good even without pads. You see the quickness. You see the vision. You see the explosive ability. You see some nice hands. I love the balance. He runs with great balance. Again, these guys aren't in pads. No one's thumping him. No one's tackling him. But just to see the way that he moves down the field, very excited about him. I like we said before, I wanted to compare him to Sony Michel. No contest. I'll take Travion Henderson all day in shorts.
Your impression of Kyle Williams?
More the same. He did have a nice catch at one point. Again, I don't think he's 100%. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
No matter what he says, the hamstring that he pulled at the combine and all that stuff. So I don't think he's. I think he's got a lot left in the tank as far as his rocket boosters. But I like the way he goes about his business. I like the way he runs routes. Look pretty good to me.
I think it's a perfect way to close out this podcast. Some UDFA talk. Tell me about Efton Chism III, because it seems like the hype continues around him.
Yeah. I don't know who you would compare him to in the past as far as like sort of like hype guys in the offseason, but I think he's going to be one of these guys. I mean, he stood out of rookie camp. He stood out with the vets on the field. I mean, he looks like, whether it's Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola. It reminds me a little bit more of Edelman in terms of what we saw yesterday. Was he caught a pass at one point down the field. He was going towards the sideline, and then suddenly he did a jump cut. He like throttled down real quick. People went by, and he went up the field very quickly. So yeah, he definitely stands out. I mean, again, we don't want to overreact to this time of year, but if just early impressions, first looks, you're like, they're going to have a hard time keeping this guy off the team.
Anything that we missed that you want to touch on before we say goodbye?
Let me just look at my notes real quick.
Talk about the Big Ten competition.
Oh yeah, we got Borgalis went 4 for 4. His first kick was about like 7 feet off the ground. It looked like one of my hooked drivers, but it went through. John Parker Romo. Don't know why we need 3 names for him, but apparently we do. He was 2 for 4. Let's see what else. I think that's.
How about Spillane? Was Spillane the quarterback of the defense out there?
Yeah. He's the guy. What was cool at one point when the starters were off the field, I was looking through my binoculars and there was Spillane talking. He did most of the talking with Keion White, but you could tell they were going over stuff in terms of like, this is how we do things, or, if you do this, then I'm going to do this. And that's the stuff I really like to watch, sort of the interactions, off the field, and looked like there were a lot of good conversations going on.
There you have it. We will talk to you soon once again. We appreciate every single one of you. Bye-bye.